I posted the Instagram story at 8:12 p.m. 8 minutes later, someone rang my doorbell. The story contained one sentence. I'm single as of tonight. The first man who gets to my apartment within an hour can be my new boyfriend. The photo showed the silver ring I had just pulled off my finger. It lay on my coffee table beside a half-melted iced Americano. Within 2 minutes, the viewer count on my private account jumped from 23 to 71. Replies began stacking up. Are you drunk? A row of laughing emojis. And from a man I had met twice at building events. Send the address. I ignored all of them. When the doorbell rang a second time, I looked at my phone. 8:20. 8 minutes. For one ridiculous second, I thought it was Ethan. He lived north of Boston. Even with no traffic, it would take him at least 35 minutes to reach my building. Unless he had already been nearby, it was impossible. Still, I crossed the apartment barefoot and looked through the peephole. The man standing under the hallway light was not Ethan Caldwell. It was Adrian Cole, founder of the smart home company on the 17th floor of Harbor Point office tower, and the one man in the entire complex I least wanted to see. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. He had a paper bag of sushi in one hand, as if he had simply stopped by to deliver dinner. I opened the door 3 inches. How do you know where I live? Good evening to you too. He lifted the bag. You don't look happy to see me. I'm not. That's disappointing. I started to close the door. The faint amusement left his face. Wait, he said. Delete the story. Someone in the Harbor Point tenants group me is asking for your apartment number. 2 hours earlier, I had believed the worst thing that could happen that night was ending an 18-month relationship. I had been wrong. Nora, it's just dinner, Ethan had said over video call. Your mother arranged for you to sit alone with another woman? That's not just dinner. Her father does business with mine. Our families have known each other forever. I'm showing my face for an hour. That's all. You said that last time. Ethan went quiet. I knew that silence better than I knew some of his words. In 18 months together, his mother, Victoria, had never openly told me I was unwelcome. She was too polished for that. The first time Ethan brought me to the Caldwell home, Victoria greeted me with a careful hug and complimented my coat. At dinner, she asked where I had gone to college, whether my scholarships had covered all 4 years, and whether my parents still owned their home. The questions sounded conversational. They were far too precise to be casual. When I described my work as a visual designer, she smiled and said, creative industries must be exciting when you're young. Ethan did not challenge the implication. He redirected the conversation to his father's latest development project. On the drive home, he said, she's cautious with everyone. Give her time. Don't read too much into it. I later learned that Victoria's caution extended to nearly every decision in her son's life. At first, I had mistaken Ethan's compliance for kindness. He almost never raised his voice. When a restaurant brought the wrong meal, he said it was fine. When an airline canceled our flight, he calmly found another route. Life with him seemed incapable of becoming chaotic. Eventually, I understood that his calm was often fear of conflict wearing better clothes. That did not mean his kindness was fake. When I had the flu, he left soup, medicine, and a new humidifier outside my door. When my father came to Boston for a medical follow-up, Ethan took a day off and drove him to every appointment. When I panicked over my student loan repayment plan, he sat beside me at the kitchen table and recalculated every payment until midnight. Those moments were real. That was why it took me so long to admit that tenderness was not the same thing as choosing someone. For our first anniversary, Ethan booked a riverside restaurant that normally required reservations 2 months in advance. I bought a new dress and waited 40 minutes before he called. Victoria needed him at a charity gala. The next morning, I saw photos his sister had posted. Victoria had spent the entire evening surrounded by board members and family friends. She had never been alone. Ethan explained that his absence would have made the family look disorganized. He sent flowers. He rebooked a restaurant. I accepted the apology and told myself one canceled anniversary did not define a relationship. Then the cancellations multiplied. 2 hours before a weekend trip to Maine, Victoria demanded that he attend a family lunch. On my birthday, he left a show during intermission because she claimed the security alarm at the family house would not stop beeping. When I won my firm's annual design award, he sat in the front row until a call from his mother pulled him out of the room minutes before I walked on stage. Every time he came back. Every time he apologized. And because he always came back, I kept telling myself to give him more time. Victoria had chosen his school, his major, his first job, his apartment, and the car he drove. She did not think my father's bankruptcy, my mother's years of overnight shifts, or my remaining student debt belonged anywhere near the Caldwell family. She never ordered me to leave Ethan. She simply invited him to family dinners and seated a suitable woman beside him, a private wealth advisor, a real estate developer's daughter, an investment consultant recently transferred back from London. Every time Ethan told me nothing would happen. Every time he attended. Refusing meant Victoria reminded him that his apartment belonged to a family company, his car was registered in her name, and his position at Caldwell Development existed because his parents had arranged it. Then she would stop answering his calls for days or tell relatives that her son was abandoning the family for a girlfriend. That night she had arranged another dinner. And Ethan had chosen compliance again. I've said no to her plenty of times, he told me. Can you please understand what position I'm in? I've understood for 18 months. She's my mother. Then what am I? His mouth opened. No answer came. I waited 10 seconds. Those 10 seconds clarified what 18 months of excuses had hidden. Ethan loved me, but whenever loving me carried a cost, he stepped backward. We're done, I said. His face changed. Don't threaten me with a breakup. I'm not threatening you. I pulled the ring from my finger and set it in front of the camera. Your mother always assumed I'd leave on my own. She was right. Nora, calm down. I've been calm for too long. I ended the call. He called 3 times. I declined each one. On the 4th attempt, he sent a message. Are you serious? I did not answer. A few minutes later, another message appeared. Fine. 1 word. That was all. I stared at it until the ache in my chest hardened into something reckless. Then I photographed the ring and posted the story to my private account. I did not truly want a new boyfriend. I assumed I would delete it after an hour, turn off my phone, and wake up embarrassed. I knew it was impulsive. I knew sober, sensible Nora would hate it. But when I pressed share, I was tired of waiting. Waiting for Ethan to finish another call with his mother. Waiting for him to decline the next arranged dinner. Waiting for the day he could introduce me without first calculating what Victoria would think. Some small, humiliating part of me still hoped he would see the story, walk out of that dinner, and come to me. Not for a dramatic declaration, not to compete for a ridiculous title. Just once I wanted him to arrive first and explain everything else later. Instead, 8 minutes after I posted, Adrian Cole stood in the 12th floor hallway of West Residence and told me someone was hunting for my apartment number. West Residence and Harbor Point Office Tower occupied the same mixed-use complex in Boston's Seaport District. A shared plaza, parking garage, restaurants, and coffee shops connected the buildings. Residents, office tenants, and property staff also shared an unofficial GroupMe with nearly 300 members. Who posted my story? I asked. We don't know yet. Adrian took out his phone. Your account is private, which means the screenshot came from someone you approved. But right now, the bigger problem is what happened after. The GroupMe had exploded. People guessed why I had broken up. People joked about racing to my building. One message said, she lives in West Residence. I've seen her picking up packages. Then an account named Mason R began adding details. Nora Bennett, designer on the 16th floor of Harbor Point. Her boyfriend is Ethan Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell has never liked her. Her family went bankrupt. Her father owed a lot of money. A few lines below, Mason had privately messaged a temporary front desk worker and asked which floor I lived on. Cold moved down my spine. I had never told my coworkers the most private details of my family history. Only Ethan knew them. Delete the story and disable message requests, Adrian said. Then call the West Residence desk yourself and request a temporary visitor restriction. It has to come from the resident. Only then did I really look at him. 3 months earlier, Adrian had stepped on my foot in the elevator and offered an apology so mechanical it sounded automated. I had followed him out and demanded that he say it like he meant it. Without looking up from his phone, he had replied that he had already apologized. After that, we began a war neither of us officially declared. He took my coffee by mistake. I grabbed the last tuna sandwich before he could reach it. During a fire drill, I told a coworker that the man from the 17th floor was arrogant enough to suffocate everyone around him. I thought he disliked me as much as I disliked him. Yet he was the first person at my door. Why did you see the GroupMe messages? My operations director is in the group. He sent me the screenshot. And then you ran here from your office? I happened to be downstairs picking up dinner. He said it too casually. Even without delays, crossing the plaza from Harbor Point, entering West Residence, and taking the elevator to 12 would take 6 or 7 minutes. I looked at the sushi bag. This was a coincidence too? No. This was my dinner. Then why bring it? Adrian paused and set the bag beside my door. Because showing up empty-handed at a newly single woman's apartment sounds even more suspicious. You don't get to lecture me. You're right. He stepped back. But if someone had to be first tonight, I'd rather it be me. He walked toward the elevator. Before the doors closed, he looked back. Nora. What? I didn't come because of the story. The doors slid shut. I locked my apartment and deleted the story. It was already too late. The screenshot continued spreading. In the next 10 minutes, I received more than 20 message requests. Some men treated it like a joke and asked whether the position was still available. Some sent selfies and live locations. One account with no profile picture wrote only, 12th floor, right? I closed the curtains, checked the deadbolt twice, and wedged a dining chair beneath the handle. It would not have stopped anyone determined to enter, but doing something felt better than standing there shaking. The West residence front desk called minutes later. Someone claiming to deliver flowers had phoned and asked for my unit number. The desk had refused, but advised me to place a visitor restriction through my resident account. That was when the fear became real. One impulsive story and one malicious person had turned my home into a location strangers believed they were entitled to find. I stood in my kitchen with my phone in my hand, wanting to call my mother and unable to make myself do it. She had only recently retired after years of overnight work, and her blood pressure was unstable. I could not tell her that someone had taken the years she spent stocking shelves at 3 a.m, accepting every extra shift to help pay my father's debts, and turn them into entertainment for a group chat. Then Ethan messaged me. Delete the story. Why? I typed. My mother saw it. The last small part of me that had hoped he might be worried disappeared. He was not asking whether anyone had found my address. He was not asking whether I felt safe. He was worried his mother had been embarrassed. Already deleted, I replied. Do you know Mason R? He took a long time to answer. Probably Mason Reed, he works with me. Why does he know about my family? The typing indicator appeared, vanished, then returned. Finally, Ethan wrote. A few months ago we were drinking. I was stressed. I might have told him some things. How much? I don't remember. Do you remember that I asked you never to tell anyone? Yes. I closed my eyes. So you told him anyway. Nora, my mother had threatened to take back the apartment and car. She said she'd push me out of the company. I needed someone to talk to. So you used my story to make yourself feel better? I didn't mean for this to happen. You always say you didn't mean it, as though intention matters more than impact. He stopped replying. I asked another question. Does your mother know Mason? Yes, he has helped her with client research. Did she ever talk to him about me? Another long silence. Then Ethan admitted that Victoria had asked Mason to look into my background. She wanted to know exactly how much my father had owed, where my mother worked, and whether marrying me might create future financial obligations for Ethan. Mason had gathered the information into a file. Ethan had known. He had never told me. I made her stop, he wrote. But you didn't tell me. I was afraid it would hurt you. So instead, you let me find out when a stranger posted my entire life for hundreds of people. I didn't know he would do that. I set down the phone. That night, my best friend Rachel and my coworker Claire came over. Rachel checked every window and lock before she sat down. Then she helped me call the property office. Through my resident account, I verified my identity, requested a temporary visitor restriction through the following morning, and asked management to preserve calls to the front desk, visitor logs, and elevator lobby camera footage. The overnight desk initially promised only to keep an eye on things. Adrian helped us reach the manager on duty. Once the manager confirmed that my request was active, Adrian left the authorization and every next decision with me. He did not take over. He simply made sure the right person answered. When the cameras and access restriction were finally confirmed, Rachel turned and hugged me. The careful calm I had maintained all night cracked. I did not sob. I pressed my forehead against her shoulder and cried quietly while she rubbed my back, just as she had when I learned about my father's bankruptcy in college. None of it is shameful, she kept saying. None of what your family survived is shameful. I had been 19 when my father's company collapsed. That winter, I came home from school and found a for sale sign outside the house where I had grown up. My mother sat at the kitchen table sorting her jewelry into piles to consign. My father spent an entire night in the dark garage. I finished college through scholarships, restaurant shifts, freelance posters, and editing resumes for other students. Those facts were not secrets. but they were private pieces of my life I had entrusted to very few people. Ethan had been one of them. I had once told him I was not ashamed that my family had lost money. What frightened me was that other people might reduce my parents to the worst year they had ever lived through. He had held me and promised he would never let anyone use it against me. Now the information hurting me had come from him. That realization cut deeper than every cruel message in the group me. Rachel placed her phone hard on the coffee table after reading the screenshots. This is not gossip. This is harassment and a safety issue. Claire recognized Mason's username. She had met him at an industry event. He had worked at Ethan's company for less than a year, but he was skilled at attaching himself to people with money and influence. Victoria had introduced him to potential clients, and Mason had begun acting like her unofficial assistant. He probably thought helping her remove you would buy him access to the Caldwell network, Claire said. Then why humiliate me in a group of 300 people? Rachel answered. Because doing Victoria a favor wasn't enough. He wanted an audience. He likes people knowing he has information they don't. We began preserving everything. The screenshot trail, group me messages, account details, message requests, the front desk call, and Mason's attempt to obtain my unit number. I decided to submit written complaints to the property manager and Mason's employer the next morning. Near midnight, Adrian messaged me. Is the visitor restriction active? Yes. Any more doorbells? No. Good. I typed. Do you know Mason Reed? A moment later, Adrian sent a screenshot. 2 months earlier, Mason had contacted him and asked about suppliers and pricing ranges for Cole Smart Home. When Adrian refused, Mason mentioned me. That designer on 16 doesn't like you, right? If you want, I can tell you a few things about her. Adrian had replied with 2 words. Not interested. Why did you keep this? I asked. Because his questions didn't sound like ordinary gossip. Did you investigate him? I organized the messages he sent voluntarily. You already knew he was circling Ethan? Some of it. Why didn't you tell me? His answer came a few seconds later. Because 3 months ago you glared at me for breathing too loudly in the elevator? A laugh escaped me. It was the first time I had laughed all night. When the laugh faded, exhaustion returned. Rachel and Claire slept in my living room. I lay in bed with the lamp on, checking my door camera every few minutes, even though the hallway remained empty. At 1 a.m, the property manager confirmed through the resident portal that the restriction and footage preservation request had been logged. Minutes later, Adrian sent a photo of the West residence lobby. You're still downstairs? I asked. The manager just arrived. I confirmed he had your request. I'm leaving now. Don't you work tomorrow? I do. Meetings can move. I stared at the message for a long time before replying, thank you. He did not ask to come upstairs. He did not use my fear as an opening for flirtation. Access is confirmed, he wrote. Get some sleep. Only then did I turn off the lamp. The next morning, I arrived at Harbor Point half an hour earlier than usual. As the elevator doors began to close, a hand stopped them. Adrian stepped inside carrying 2 coffees and a paper breakfast bag. He pressed 17 and held 1 cup toward me. Oat milk latte, half sweet. I did not take it immediately. How do you know my order? You buy the same thing in the lobby every morning. You watch me? You stand in front of me and say the order out loud. It would require effort not to know. I accepted the cup. Thank you. It was the first sincere thank you I had given him in 3 months. The elevator opened on 16. I stayed inside. Adrian glanced at me. Aren't you going to work? I want an answer first. The doors closed, and we continued to 17. Last night, I said, did you really come because you saw the group messages? No. Then why? The doors opened. He walked into the office, and I followed. Cole's smart home occupied an open corner suite with glass walls, product prototypes, and a view of the harbor. Adrian took me into his private office, set the breakfast bag on his desk, and opened a file on his computer. It contained messages Mason had voluntarily sent to people over the previous few months. He had asked, when are Nora and Ethan finally going to break up? Which building does she live in? Is Mrs. Caldwell already introducing Ethan to someone else? This was no longer one drunken conversation that had gotten out of control. Adrian had saved more than screenshots about me. At an industry reception, Mason had asked his sales director when Cole's Smart Home planned to release its next product. On another occasion, he had pretended to be helping the Caldwell family locate vendors and asked several companies for pricing ranges. Each question could be dismissed as networking. Placed in chronological order, they became a pattern. When did you start organizing this? I asked. After the second time he asked about you. What about the first time? I assumed he liked gossip. Adrian opened another folder. A photo filled the screen. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan and I had argued in the Harbor Point coffee shop after he canceled our main trip. The picture had been taken from a low angle several tables away. My back was toward the camera. Ethan leaned across the table, his expression strained. Mason had sent the photograph to someone with the caption, "They won't last much longer." My stomach tightened. That argument had felt private even in a public place. Someone had been observing it, saving it, waiting for it to become useful. Adrian turned the screen away before I had to study the image any longer. The sources of Mason's information were finally clear. My father's business bankruptcy and the sale of our old home came from public records. The exact debt, my fears about my family history, and details of my relationship with Ethan had come from Ethan himself. The address questions, photographs, and business inquiries were Mason's own work. Understanding the chain did not reduce Ethan's responsibility. It simply showed how Mason had assembled my life piece by piece. I asked our outside counsel which records you should preserve, Adrian said. The property logs, original group screenshots, and anything Mason sent directly can all be provided to you. Whether you report it and how far you take it is your decision. He copied the folder to a blank flash drive and pushed it across the desk. Then he let go. He did not write my complaint. He did not tell me what outcome I should demand. After someone mentioned your floor in the group, Mason asked a temporary desk worker for your unit number, he said. I didn't know whether he wanted to scare you or planned to share it, so I went over first. You thought he might come to my apartment? I thought someone might. Why did that matter to you? Adrian did not answer immediately. He leaned against his desk and looked at me for several seconds. Because I didn't want any man in that group getting to your door before I did. The office seemed to go still. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Adrian looked away first. But Mason comes before whatever this conversation is, he said. At 10:30, Rachel and I arrived at Ethan's company. I had already emailed Human Resources a formal complaint, evidence index, and request for records preservation. Ethan registered us as visitors. The receptionist checked our identification and escorted us to a glass conference room near HR. The HR manager and compliance director were already inside. Ethan sat at the far end of the table, pale and sleepless. Mason entered last, carrying a laptop. He appeared to expect a routine interview. Then he saw me. A smile pulled at one side of his mouth. Looks like the story didn't find you a new boyfriend after all. The HR manager stopped him immediately. Mason, from this point forward, answer only questions related to the complaint. I slid the printed evidence index to the center of the table. These are records of you sharing my family information in the Harbor Point tenants group, spreading clues about my residence, and asking a temporary desk worker for my unit number. His smile weakened. I repeated things other people told me. You asked for my apartment number. He looked at HR. I never went to her home. Is asking one question harassment now? Whether your conduct violates policy will be determined through the investigation, the compliance director said. First, explain how you obtained the information. Mason leaned back. Nora posted her breakup online. People commented. Now she's pretending she's a victim because the attention wasn't flattering. Posting the story was reckless, I said. I accept that. I did not consent to you publishing my parents' history, an exact debt figure, private conversations, or my location. Ethan told me all of that. He turned toward Ethan as if he had finally found the emergency exit. You should be questioning him first. I looked at Ethan. On that point, he's right. You were the first person to disclose my private information. Ethan swallowed and nodded. I was. He placed both hands flat on the table, perhaps to stop them from shaking. I told Mason personal things about Nora when I was drunk. I also knew my mother had asked him to research Nora's background, and I did not tell her. That's my responsibility. Mason had not expected the admission. Ethan connected his laptop to the conference room display. A message thread between Victoria and Mason appeared on the screen. That morning, Ethan had confronted his mother. Victoria, eager to prove she had requested only a background check and never instructed Mason to humiliate me publicly, had forwarded the full conversation to him. She meant to transfer the blame. Instead, she documented her own role. Victoria had written, "How much debt does her father still have?" Mason replied, "I'll find out. Then." Ethan is temporarily infatuated. He needs to understand the difference between their circumstances. Mason answered, "Leave it to me." The last message had been sent the previous night. It's taking care of itself. She publicly announced the breakup. The room fell silent except for the ventilation system. Mason stared at Ethan. Your mother told me to investigate her. Now you're producing the messages so you can look brave in front of your ex-girlfriend? I'm not putting everything on you, Ethan said. I already admitted that I gave you the first private information. But you chose to investigate her address, circulate the screenshot, and seek confidential information from other tenants. Those decisions belong to you. The HR manager asked whether Victoria would confirm the thread. Ethan looked at his phone. 5 missed calls from his mother had accumulated since morning. With the room's permission, he called her back on speaker. Victoria answered immediately. Why did you give our private conversation to your company? This is a family matter, and you have turned it into a formal investigation. Do you understand what this could do to the Caldwell name? Ethan's fingers trembled, but his voice held. The embarrassing part isn't Nora filing a complaint, it's that you had someone investigate her. I was protecting you. No. You were deciding who was allowed in my life. There was a brief silence. Then Victoria began listing everything she had provided: private school tuition, college expenses, his first position at the family company, the apartment held by a family entity, the car in her name. Those details had ended every previous confrontation. Ethan closed his eyes. I know you've done a great deal for me, he said. I'll leave the apartment, I'll return the car, and I'll resign from Caldwell Development. You do not have to approve of my choices, but you do not get to make them for me, and you do not get to investigate people in my name. Victoria asked whether he was really prepared to cut his mother out of his life for me. I'm not abandoning you, Ethan said. I'm making my own decision for the first time. He ended the call. His hand was still shaking. He did not call her back. The compliance director turned to Mason. In addition to the private information complaint, we have records of you requesting supplier and pricing data from employees at other tenant companies. Do you acknowledge that these accounts and messages belong to you? Mason did not answer. The HR manager placed him on paid administrative leave pending a formal investigation. He was instructed to surrender his badge, laptop, and access device so IT could preserve his account records. When Mason stood, his face had lost its color. At the door, he turned toward me. You destroyed my career. I didn't send those messages, I said. You did. Leaving the conference room did not feel triumphant. It felt exhausting. That afternoon, 2 employees submitted additional evidence through HR. One had saved comments Mason made in other groups. A young intern reported that he had joked about her family background and financial aid, but she had been too intimidated to complain. For the first time, the company treated his behavior as a pattern rather than a few tasteless jokes. Ethan waited for me in the lobby. I'm staying with a friend tonight, he said. Tomorrow I'll return the apartment keys and the car. I contacted a recruiter, and I scheduled an appointment with a therapist. I nodded. That's good. Nora, I know I'm late, but I finally understand that I shouldn't have let my mother decide my life. And I shouldn't have left you to absorb the damage she caused. No, you shouldn't have. Hope appeared in his expression. Does that mean there could still be an us? I looked at the man I had loved for 18 months. The soup and medicine when I was sick had been real. The day he drove my father to appointments had been real. The nights he helped me organize my student loan payments had been real. But I no longer believed that the next time Victoria objected, he would stay. I reached into my bag and took out the ring. It was not expensive. We had bought it at a small shop while traveling. Ethan had once said he would replace it with a formal ring when he was finally in control of his own life. I placed it in his palm. I won't pretend we never loved each other. And I won't turn all 18 months into a mistake. But I can't stake my future on the possibility that you'll be ready someday. His fingers closed around the ring. If I'd done this sooner? Maybe the answer would have been different. He nodded as though he had already known. I'm glad you stood up today, I said. But doing the right thing now doesn't automatically reopen our relationship. I really can be different. I waited 18 months for you to be ready. I can't return to the same place and keep waiting because today was different. Ethan lowered his head. After a long time, he asked, is it Adrian? I did not answer. At that moment, I did not know the answer myself. Adrian was waiting in the Harbor Point lobby when I came downstairs. He leaned against a column with 2 coffees in his hands. When he saw me, he offered one. Finished? Finished. How do you feel? Not as satisfied as I thought I would. That makes sense. We walked outside together. Cold wind came in from the harbor. Adrian did not ask for every detail of the meeting. He gave me the coffee and waited until I chose to speak. "How is Ethan?" he eventually asked. He finally stood up to his mother. "Are you getting back together?" "No." His step paused for half a second before continuing. "Because he waited too long?" "Because I can't keep a relationship alive on hope." We reached a small plaza at the corner and sat on a bench. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Silence between us used to feel like hostility. Now it felt unexpectedly easy. "Adrian," I said. "Yeah?" "Last night you said you weren't applying for the position." "Correct." "Then why did you say you didn't want anyone else reaching my door first?" He looked down at his cup. "Those two things don't contradict each other." "Explain." "I didn't start liking you last night." He looked at me. "It started before that." I stared at him. A smile touched his mouth. "You look more shocked than you did when I took your coffee. We have spent 3 months disliking each other." "You disliked me." "I didn't dislike you. You apologized like a robot the first time we met. An investor had pulled out that morning. I had enough cash to make one more payroll, and I hadn't slept. I was rude." He paused. "I planned to apologize properly later. Then you started refusing to press my floor in the elevator. You deserved it." "Possibly." "When did you start liking me?" "Hard to identify one moment." He looked across the plaza. "Maybe when a client humiliated one of your interns and you told him, in a glass conference room, that he could speak respectfully or find another agency." "How do you know about that?" "Glass walls are not soundproof." "Anything else?" "You know every front desk employee's name, and no matter how late you work, you never unload your frustration on the night cleaning staff." "You really have been watching me." "I've already confessed to that." My heartbeat accelerated. He did not move closer. He remained beside me, calm enough to leave the decision where it belonged. "You just ended a relationship," he said. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I can invite you to dinner. If you want to go, we go. If you don't, I won't ask again." "What if I don't say no?" Adrian turned toward me. "Then we have dinner and see what happens." "You already reached my apartment in 8 minutes." "That doesn't count." "Why not?" "Because that night you were trying to find out whether anyone would choose you." His voice softened. "I don't want to become evidence that you're worth choosing." The sentence landed too accurately. For 18 months, Ethan had told me he loved me. Yet every time Victoria appeared, our relationship became a vote I had to win again. Adrian did not ask me to prove anything. He did not treat the previous night's help as something I owed him for. "What do you want now?" I asked. "One chance to invite you to dinner properly." "Only dinner?" "For the first date, yes." "The sushi restaurant?" "Are you finally offering to repay me for the sushi I left at your door?" I laughed. "You chose to leave it. I keep records." "You keep a budget for dates?" "Occupational damage from running a company." Our first date was at the same sushi restaurant. There was no sweeping declaration. We did not define a relationship before dessert. We talked about work. He told me about sleeping in his office during the first year of his company because he could not afford rent on both an apartment and a workspace. I told him how scholarships, restaurant shifts, and freelance design work had carried me through college after my father's business failed. He did not tell me none of it mattered. He did not promise to fix it. He listened and said that must have been hard. Then he asked what had helped me survive that year. He asked how my mother was doing now. He asked whether my father still blamed himself. He did not turn my pain into a polished lesson. At the end of the evening, he walked me to the entrance of West Residence. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. I looked at him and shook my head. "Not tonight." "Okay." He did not sigh or make a joke to hide disappointment. He opened the building door for me and said goodnight. A week later, Human Resources informed me that the investigation was complete. Mason was terminated for harassment, misuse of private information, serious violations of employee conduct standards, and attempts to obtain confidential business data. Over the following weeks, Adrian and I kept seeing each other. If I worked until 10, he asked whether I wanted food instead of ordering it without permission. When my mother came to Boston for a medical follow-up, he sent me information about nearby parking and accessible entrances, but did not insert himself into the visit. When I hesitated outside a Harbor Point networking event, he said, "If you want to go in, I'll stay beside you. If you want to leave, we leave now." One evening, Rachel asked whether I might be confusing safety with love simply because Adrian had appeared on the worst night of my life. The question unsettled me for 2 days. Then I repeated it to Adrian exactly as she had asked it. He was quiet for a moment. It's possible, he said, which is why we don't have to label this quickly. You're not worried I'll realize I don't actually like you? Of course I am. That doesn't give me the right to rush you. So we kept having dinner. We walked along the harbor. We continued arguing in elevators about who should press the buttons. Sometimes Adrian received calls from family while we were together. I would automatically prepare for him to cancel our plans. The first time he noticed, he told the caller, I have plans tonight. I'll call you tomorrow. Then he put his phone down and asked me to finish the story I had been telling. 1 month after the HR meeting, Ethan sent me a message. He had moved into a small apartment, started interviewing at other companies, and continued therapy. Victoria still called every day, but he was learning not to answer immediately. I replied, keep going. You're building a life that belongs to you. We did not reconcile. We also did not rewrite the past as though none of it had mattered. The relationship was over. It had still been real. A few days later, Mason sent a written apology through HR. He said he had wanted Victoria's approval and believed removing me from Ethan's life would earn access to better clients and connections. I read the letter once. I archived it and did not respond. Adrian continued working on 17. I continued working on 16. Most mornings he bought an extra coffee. Sometimes it was the half-sweet oat milk latte. Sometimes it was the iced Americano I ordered when I had slept badly. Once I asked, how do you remember everything? He said, you pass me every day. Forgetting would be harder. 3 months after the night of the Instagram story, Adrian invited me to meet the Cole Smart Home team. During those 3 months, neither of us had called the other a boyfriend or girlfriend. I needed to know that I was moving toward him because I wanted him, not because I was afraid of being alone. Adrian never asked for a deadline. Then, on a Friday evening, I finished the most important project presentation of my career. When I left the conference room, I found Adrian at the far end of the 17th floor hallway holding 2 coffees. He raised them slightly. Celebrate, or be quiet for a while first? I walked over and took one. Celebrate. That was the first time I chose him without a crisis making the choice for me. I followed him into the office. One of his engineers looked up and grinned. You're the woman who made Adrian run out of a meeting in 8 minutes. I turned to Adrian. You said you happened to be downstairs? The office became suspiciously quiet. Adrian did not blink. I remembered incorrectly. His operations director laughed. He saw the screenshot and left in the middle of a meeting. Didn't even take his jacket. The sushi came from my desk. Everyone laughed. On the walk home, I kept the interrogation going. So the dinner wasn't even yours? Does investigating this now serve a purpose? Yes. You lied and stole an employee's sushi. I replaced it with 2 orders the next day. We reached the entrance of West Residence. 3 months earlier, he had crossed the plaza and stood outside my apartment while strangers searched for my address. Now there was no emergency. No one was watching. Adrian stopped beneath the building light. Nora. Yes? Is the position from that story still available? What position? New boyfriend. I pretended to consider it. The listing probably expired. Then I'd like to submit a new application. What are your qualifications? Fast response time. What else? I remember your coffee. Keep going. I do what I say I'll do. My smile softened. Adrian took my hand. Most importantly, I'll ask. I won't decide for you and call it love. That's a strong application. So? I let him wait 1 more second. Yes. Just yes? Yes, Adrian. You're my boyfriend. He kissed me. The kiss was gentle and certain. 3 months earlier, I had posted a foolish Instagram story at the lowest point of my life. 8 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Everyone who heard the story remembered the 8 minutes and the stolen sushi. What I remembered was everything that happened afterward. Before Adrian helped, he asked. When he made a promise, he kept it. When a moment became awkward, difficult, or expensive, he did not disappear. He never tried to solve my entire life. He never expected gratitude to become love. He simply kept showing up. And this time I chose to stay too.